Happy Friday, everyone. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee. Before we get started, let's take a quick glimpse at today's highlights. Volkswagen recalls 8.5 million diesel vehicles in Europe, but its new CEO believes VW can bounce back from the scandal in 2 to 3 years. We're seeing a rise in global M&As while a British economist won a Nobel Prize this week. We tell you about some of the top global business news that made headlines this week. But before we get to that, we start off today in Washington, where President Park Geunhye attended a meeting of South Korean and American business leaders and called for increased cooperation to improve bilateral trade relations. In a speech, she proposed strengthening the Korea-U.S. free trade deal and creating an environment to better accommodate investors. President Park noted the need for close cooperation between Seoul and Washington amid the expansion of mega FTAs like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP. Now, she added that Seoul's membership to the TPP would benefit businesses in both countries, considering the country's trade pacts with giant economies like the European Union and China. Meanwhile, Volkswagen says it will recall millions of vehicles in Europe after the German government forced its hand over the emissions cheating scandal. The situation seems to be getting more toxic for the auto giant, but VW's new CEO says he's confident the company will be back on its feet in 2 to 3 years' time. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
Volkswagen is recalling 8.5 million diesel engine cars in the European Union after the German government demanded the company service the affected vehicles. The announcement came after Germany's automobile regulator demanded that all Volkswagen cars sold with the emissions cheating software be recalled, calling the company's plans insufficient.
Volkswagen must now remove the corresponding software from all vehicles and take the necessary steps to ensure compliance with emission regulations. So, a large-scale recall is necessary.
Applying the German measures throughout Europe, the car manufacturer said repair and the recall in 28 EU member countries will begin in January of 2016. The company, however, has yet to announce how it'll fix the cars, but faces a deadline set by the German government for technical details of the solution by the end of next month. Volkswagen has indicated for weeks that it intends to fix the cars affected by the faulty software meant to cheat on emissions tests. Volkswagen said the company has sold around 11 million cars worldwide, all of which were installed with the software. The company has put aside nearly $7.5 billion to cover the cost of the scandal, but market watchers say the expenses could be more costly. Shares in the company recovered slightly last week, but are still down nearly 20% since the emissions cheating scandal was exposed in mid-September. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
And it's not only Volkswagen feeling the heat over recalls. Kia Motors is going to recall almost 420,000 Sorento SUVs in the U.S. and Canada. The Korean automaker says the cars can be shifted out of park when the driver's foot isn't on the brake, which could cause the vehicle to actually roll away. According to documents filed by Kia with the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the recall affects Sorentos from the 2011 through 2013 model years. More than 377,000 vehicles are subject to the recall in the U.S. and 42,000 in Canada. The company is expected to start issuing recall notices on November 24th in the United States and December 1st in Canada. Both Korean Air and ASEAN Airlines have announced that they have set their fuel surcharge at 0 for international flights that are ticketed in November. This would make it the third consecutive month with no surcharges levied on international flights as global oil prices remain low. This comes as Singapore jet fuel prices, which act as an important regional benchmark, have remained below 150 cents per gallon. The wave on fuel surcharge will apply to all international tickets bought before the end of November, regardless of the date of departure. And it's not unusual to see news of taxi or rental van drivers being exposed for overcharging foreign tourists here in Korea. So in an effort to crack down on these kind of practices, the government is stepping up penalties, making it harder for offenders to get off the hook. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
At an underground parking lot at Incheon Airport, the driver of this rental van is luring a foreign tourist towards his car. But he was soon caught by police for overcharging the passenger with the rigged taximeter.
It was 165,000 won. An hour's taxi in Australia is probably $100. So when it got to 150, I thought, it might be a bit much, but I didn't think much of it.
This is just one of the 139 cases exposed for exploiting foreign tourists since last month. In order to prevent taxis and rental vans from overcharging foreign visitors, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced it will introduce a so-called ThreeStrike rule starting early next year. Under the guideline, first-time violators will be fined roughly $170, while if caught twice, drivers will face a $350 penalty and a 30-day license suspension. If caught a third time within 2 years, the person in question will be charged $520 and have their license revoked. The taxi company will also be stripped of its business license if one of its drivers is caught 3 times for overcharging.
We have been applying the ThreeStrike rule for taxis refusing to take passengers. Since then, the problem has somewhat subsided, and we expect the problem of overcharging to die down with this rule as well.
Up until now, punishment has been relatively lighter, with third-time violators facing the same $520 fine and a 20-day license suspension only if the incidents all occur within the same year. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
It's been a thriving year for mergers and acquisitions, not just here in Korea, but around the world. In fact, the value of proposed M&As are set to be very close to setting a new record this year. For more on this, we're now joined by our Eunice Kim in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
All right, so what kind of figures are we talking about here?
Well, Ji-yoon, this week was a big week for global M&A announcements. According to Thomson Reuters data, we're coming around $3.5 trillion US dollars in global deal making this year so far, very close to, if not already, toppling the record set back in 2007. Now, from beer to healthcare to media, the big deals are rolling in. Take a look.
Wall Street was hit with an M&A bang this week. More than $170 billion in takeovers were announced Monday local time. That sum largely driven by 2 big proposals. U.S. computer company Dell, in one of the largest tech deals to date, moved to acquire cloud computing company EMC for $67 billion, taking on $50 billion in debt. Second, the world's largest brewer, Anheuser-Busch InBev, is in principle to take over number 2 SAB Miller for a stunning $103 billion. If greenlit, the behemoth brewer would account for 1 in 3 beers sold on the globe.
They are paying a lot of money, but at this point in time, we look at interest rates likely to turn in the next 12 months or so. And I think this is arguably the time to start utilizing cash funds and moving into the M&A arena.
It's been a spectacular year for M&As. The U.S. has seen the most. Companies there announcing year-to-date nearly $1.7 trillion in M&A deals, closing in on the record set 15 years ago. And unlike the tech bubble of 2000, this time the trend is everywhere. Data from Dealogic show healthcare was leading in sectors with the most M&A capital flowing in at least $484 billion, followed by tech and oil and gas. Growth was seen across the board in this year's top 5 sectors. Thomson Reuters data show deal making in 2015 is very close to, if not at, $3.5 trillion US dollars. And not only is the market flush with cash, last week, Dealogic said mega deals, those worth $10 billion or more, made up for more than a third of M&As in the first 9 months. That's an 89% jump from the same period last year. So why are we seeing such a bevy of corporate convergence? Blame the bad economy. As companies struggle to boost their sales figures to rake in investor confidence, they'll look to less traditional ways to expand their bottom line. M&As can help companies broaden their market share and negotiate better terms with their vendors. Still, some caution that this could be a sign of the beginning of the end of a bull run, as they see private company valuations as being much too high, pointing to the dot-com bubble burst of 2000.
So Eunice, it seems like a thriving M&A market doesn't exactly indicate better times for the economy. But the season does seem ripe for M&As.
You're right. Companies are holding a lot of cash, and for those that don't, they have access to borrowing at record low rates, as we know. So this can be an attractive option for companies hit by low demand and low on ideas to keep growing. Now, in the case of AB InBev's acquisition of SAB Miller, which I should add still has a lot of hurdles to overcome, including resolving antitrust concerns, it is the beer giant getting even bigger to poise itself to tap into markets it did not have before, in this case, Africa. M&As also tend to lead to more cost-cutting to make the company even leaner than they are now, a sign of the times, if you will. And in the case of Dell, it looks to be a move to reinvent itself, as the company has been stuck with falling PC sales, and the cloud is where a lot of action is right now.
All right, and we're seeing a lot of this happening in Asia as well, including Korea.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, Bloomberg did report that Korea was only second to China and emerging Asian countries to see M&A funds come in terms of value, that is, and it's at $86 billion in the first 9 months of this year, they said. You'll remember a few of the big ones in the news this year: Samsung Group's controversial merger of de facto holding company Cheil Industries with construction company Samsung C&T. The biggest deal so far, though, was over at SK C&C's takeover of SK Holdings that effectively solidified the family's control over Korea's third largest conglomerate. Now, other than generational succession in family-run chaebols, Korea's conglomerates are also shedding non-core businesses to be leaner and focused to be competitive in the global arena. It's also in line with the government's instruction back in 2013 to simplify their infamously complicated web of subsidiary cross-shareholdings. And more of such movements are expected into next year, June, with the likes of Lotte and Hyundai.
All right, so we talked about China and Korea, but what about Japan?
Yeah, so Japan is a prime example of a case where a company holds a lot of cash in their reserves. And even though the cheap yen may make overseas acquisitions more expensive, they're said to have already spent $41.8 billion in snatching up assets outside of their borders, nearly double from what it was last year.
Okay, well, we'll leave that there, but you have some more headlines for us before you leave.
Indeed, I do. Let's go ahead and head over to South America, shall we? One notch above junk status. Fitch Ratings further downgraded Brazil's sovereign credit rating on Thursday as the largest South American country remains mired in political turmoil over how to get its budget deficit in order. Fitch cut Brazil's long-term foreign credit rating from BBB to BBB- with a negative outlook, saying it expects the country's economic and fiscal underperformance to persist and weigh on broader confidence. The move came 5 weeks after another credit agency, S&P, downgraded Brazil's credit to junk status.
Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences, in memory of Alfred Nobel, to Angus Deaton for his analysis of consumption, poverty, and welfare.
And there you have it. The final Nobel Prize of this year's season was announced on Monday in Stockholm, Sweden. The $978,000 award money and honor went to Briton Angus Deaton. He was hailed as an economist who corrected sloppy economic assumptions using hard and fast data for his work in showing more precise correlations between consumption and poverty, and for bridging the gap between macroeconomics and microeconomics. The professor at Princeton also had a sense of humor about the news.
And then they were very keen to make sure that I did not think it was a prank. And I don't know whether this is common. I've never had a prank phone call telling me. As soon as they said that, I thought, oh my God, maybe it is a prank.
And he went on to say that he was immensely grateful for the recognition to his career's work.
Well, congratulations to him. What
Absolutely.
A sweet guy. And hopefully we'll see a Korean economist someday receiving Nobel Prize.
One day. We're waiting still.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today, Eunice.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to tune in next week for more business news that matters to you. Have a great weekend, everyone.